Hello from a gloomy Cape Cod on Easter Sunday here, ahead of what is a make or break 48 hours in the conflict in Iran and what really could be a raucous week for financial markets. I have to admit, I've been a bit whipsawed this week. It really did look like negotiations between the U.S. and Iran had broken down. They may have. But I am now back to thinking again that we need to have a deal here in the next couple days. Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi rebutted Friday's Wall Street Journal article suggesting that talks had broken down and that the Iranians had no interest in meeting in Islamabad. He said that they're open to negotiations. It sounds like there are communications taking place as we speak. There was a story on Twitter, Wall Street Journal update saying negotiations had broken down. That was from Friday. People are passing that around today as if it's new news. No, the most recent news is that Araghchi said he's open to negotiations and they sound like they're talking. There was also some language out of China at the UN late last week, which suggests they're not fully behind the Iranians. On the flip side, there's stories that they're, supplying components for drones and things like that. So it wouldn't be at all surprising for China to be playing both sides against the middle. But the comments at the UN were, that this was an illegal war, and they, basically put the onus of the blame on the U.S. and Israel. But said clearly they do not support Iran lashing out at its Gulf neighbors. And a comment about the importance of establishing safety in the Strait. It didn't speak to whether or not China would support a tolling system by Iran, but it did sound like they're not wholeheartedly behind Iran, refusing to negotiate and going whole hog to continue this conflict. If the U.S. and allies decided to fight a situation where Iran was trying to control the Strait, it's just going to gum up the passageway for potentially many months. And that would have to include bottling up Iranian oil. So really bad scenario for financial markets, but really bad for China as well, because you push much of Asia and Europe into recession. China has direct exposure to energy prices, but that indirect exposure through the economic health of its trading partners when it is sustaining itself on a trade surplus is, I think, even more important. So China really is in no position to weather a deep global recession here. And I would suspect they're encouraging Iran to try to make a negotiated settlement. That's my guess. So, Trump said last week he was going to blow up a bridge. He blew up a bridge. The U.S. and Israel went after a petrochemical plant in Iran yesterday, which the Iranians have said they will respond to. They haven't. The Iranians gave a list of 8 bridges last week they would hit in the GCC in response for the bridge being taken out. They haven't hit anything. The Iranians threatened to hit a number of U.S. tech companies who have offices in the Gulf, and all they managed to do was get a missile shot down in Dubai, and some debris fell on the Oracle building. So something's going on here. Either Iran is losing its ability to respond proportionally, or they're deciding to be very careful and not do anything to escalate because they want to negotiate. Either way, they've made a few threats that have gone unfulfilled recently, which I think is another clue that we should be looking for a negotiated settlement here. Because again, I don't think President Trump is bluffing about frying their grid. I think he thinks that he could do that, and the response of Iran hitting the Gulf would be manageable because they still are shooting things down at a very high rate. And by the way, the drones get through, but the drones are basically like paper cuts compared to a ballistic missile. You drop a ballistic missile on a refinery or something, it blows it up. A drone starts a fire, they put out the fire, a few days later they're up and running in most cases. So yeah, the drones are getting through. You're seeing a lot of flashy headlines, but my sense is Iran's capacity to respond is degraded. They're not in a very good position. There was a former foreign minister of Iran, vice president formerly as well, wrote a high-profile article in Foreign Affairs saying they should take a deal, much along the lines of what I was talking about last week here. And the rationale was similar as well. Trump will pay for a deal. You can get sanctions relief. And do you really want to, spend your life as a regime at war? because if they do this forced tolling thing, it's effectively sovereign piracy, and they will be in a permanent state of war. They'll be in blatant contravention of international law, and eventually our dependence on the strait will be reduced to the point where we can say, okay, we're not using the strait and neither are you, we're blowing up Carg Island or whatever the hell we want to do, 2-3 years down the road. So this is a real dead end for the regime that alternatively has an offer from Trump to be designated as reasonable and effectively given an international stamp of approval as the rightful leaders of Iran, which the international community has not offered for half a century. So ability to pump oil, access to cash to rebuild, loans, maybe even some reconstruction fund, if you want to call it reparations, go ahead. And all Iran has to do is give up a nuclear program that's brought it nothing but tears and is currently, under hundreds of tons of rubble. So I'm still thinking deal. Looks like Trump's extended the deadline to Tuesday at 8 p.m. And I have a feeling we're going to get a deal in a big melt up in the market. If we don't get a deal, watch out, because the market rally last week, because it's okay with tolls, but I don't think tolls are going to fly. GCC countries are, UAE's explicitly said they're going to go to the mattresses with the U.S. to physically open the strait if need be. I think others will follow, and eventually NATO will fall in line. So it's not going to be an easy path to that for Iran or financial markets. So we're at a big crossroads for risk assets in the next 48 hours. I'm going to take a flyer on the bullish side, watching things very closely. It's obviously highly uncertain. Good luck out there.